What's the most scariest paranormal activity you or someone you know have ever experienced? Freshman year of college. I was living in an apartment, 2-bedroom, 2 students per room, and my shared room had a bathroom and a walk-in closet. I was up late doing homework in the living room with my other roommate that slept in the other room. The roommate that slept in the same room as me had already gone to bed by the time I was done. I took a shower, and when I got out, I noticed the bathroom door was open. I usually close the door and lock it, but I brushed it off as me being too tired and didn't close the door properly. I continued getting ready for bed and then brought my dirty clothes into the walk-in closet to put into the hamper. When I came back out, I closed the door so that the door would touch the doorframe, but didn't actually close because I didn't want to wake my sleeping roommate. I started to walk towards my bed when I hear the door slam behind me. My first thought was that my roommate woke up, got annoyed, and aggressively closed it, but when I looked at her, she was dead asleep. I freaked out and jumped onto my bed and just sat in the dark, back against the wall, blankets pulled up to my chin, and mind racing to come up with a plausible reason. I thought, maybe the window is open and the wind closed it. Nope, my bed was right next to the window, and it was closed. I panicked and decided to go back into the brightly lit living room where my roommate was still working. I told her about what happened and she just nonchalantly told me, "Oh yeah, I felt a presence for the past few days, but it wasn't malevolent, so I didn't feel the need to alert you guys. It's probably just curious. If anything changes, I'll let you know. WTF." She continued to tell me about how most of the women in her family sort of have the sixth sense. She grew up in the Philippines and apparently, supernatural encounters are quite common there. When she was younger, she used to be able to see them and connect with them, but as she grew older, she started losing the ability. Now she only senses them. I woke up in a cold sweat, gasping for air and very disoriented. As I calmed down and coughed my breath, it felt like my window was open on a deep winter's night. Everything went cold and I could see my breath. I heard what I thought was thunder, so I looked out my window to see the clouds. It was a clear starry night. My street light flickered out, and suddenly my entire body tensed up in fear. The kind where it feels like someone is watching you and all the hairs on your neck start to stand up. It seemed like the whole world lost all sound. I've never heard quiet like that ever before. I saw shadows start creep along the walls like tendrils and looked behind me over toward my doorway. Standing off to the left of it was a grim reaper-looking thing. It reached a hand out toward me and I tried to scream, but nothing came out. I threw my cover over my head and began repeating to myself that none of this is real. When I could hear my breath again, I lowered the cover and looked around. No sign of the apparition. I took a deep breath and looked out my window and saw what appeared to be a skinned rabbit with its rib bones exposed. It had horns and a black teeth, and it hissed at me and ran off into the forest behind my house. For years after that event, I would always see the rabbit at random times. 3 or 4 times a year. Sometimes sitting under my mailbox, sometimes in the corner of my dining room. Sitting in my hallway or watching from my window. It always locked eyes with me and wouldn't vanish until I turned. I've searched for paranormal accounts of others to no avail. The only other time I've ever felt dread like that was when I drove by a house that was the base of operations for a witchcraft cult, with rumors that a portal to the underworld had been opened there. We were driving down an old country road just getting to know the area, and suddenly my wife and I both got an extreme feeling of dread and chills. About 6 months later, someone told me the rumors surrounding this house, which happened to be on the road that this experience happened to me. I had no knowledge of it whatsoever the first time I drove past it, but when I learned later, the dots just connected. I did drive past it again months later, and there was a group of people behind the building, maybe 9 or 10 people all wearing black hooded robes and holding black flowers. Spooky encounters are a pretty normal occurrence for me. When I was younger, I believed it was simply my circumstances. However, as I get older, I'm starting to believe it may just be me. Suspected supernatural encounters seem to follow me, or at the very least eerie things tend to. Here are just a few big things. When I was under 5 years old, my sister and I had a Barney doll with a voice box. We both heard it say that it wanted to kill us on multiple occasions, both when we were together and when we were on our own. We threw away the doll and come to find out decades later that our mom acquired it because its former owners said their children were having the same issue. Maybe it was just a defective toy? When I was around 7 or 8, I went to an old mining town in the mountains. We lived in the desert and in an old mining town, but not the one I'm referring to. We were with my grandparents, parents, and aunt, and we decided to stop in a doll store. These dolls were very expensive porcelain dolls that you look at more so than play with. My parents let us each choose one, and my sister chose quickly. I, on the other hand, took forever and couldn't justify spending that much money on something at this stage in my life. We were about to leave when the lady behind the counter showed me a beautiful doll that was extremely discounted because the paint on its lip was chipped. I thought the doll, was wonderful, so we bought her and went on our way. We go about our day and doubled back to where the doll shop was supposed to be, and it was gone. The storefront, adverts, everything. Just vanished. We knew it was between these two stores and it wasn't there. Those two stores shared walls, it looked like. We asked some locals working at the other shops, and they said that there was never a doll store there. Not one person validated its existence. So, we promptly left the town and I haven't been back since. The doll, whose name is Carrie, is in a box somewhere in the basement. When I was 10, I saw a ghost in a hotel. On a bright sunny day nonetheless. This hotel used to be infamous when the mining town I lived in was all hustle and bustle, but has since been nearly abandoned, it felt like. Multiple affluent people of the time and location died in that hotel and multiple locations within it. It was closed at that time, but has since reopened, to my knowledge. As for smaller encounters, I've heard conversations while alone in a house with no neighbors and all electronics were off. Men's voices, clear as day. I've seen ominous shapes in the forest I used to live by. Civil War soldiers frequented that area, so that would make sense. I have felt otherworldly presences in mineshafts and ghost towns I've traveled through. Sometimes I would see things in the windows of abandoned houses and buildings. Back during the Charlie game craze, some children in my then class decided to try to summon him. The air was crisp, with a slight warmth to it, and I had been enjoying a good book, either one of the Diary of a Wimpy Kid novellas or another one, I can't recall. I remember seeing everyone dash up as soon as our teacher left. They ran for the windows, metallic louvres which could be cranked shut by either the little knob or by hand. I glanced up from my book, and as soon as I saw them gathering up the paper and pencil, I understood what they were doing. I simply ignored them, though my eyes flicked up to the miscreants every so often. I was uneasy. It was like I could feel something telling me that no, they really shouldn't be doing that. But, just as I had ignored my colleagues, I ignored my gut feeling. What happened next? I swear I saw something on the other side leap off of the teacher's desk where everyone else was gathered and land on the desk of this girl that I shall call Elle. The desk fell flat on its side, as if it had been pushed over. Silence washed over everyone, as if we were verifying, checking, making sure that we weren't imagining it. Elle screamed, and at the sound of her voice, 6 or 7 more desks fell. None of us were near to them. The teacher's desk was positioned in the upper left corner of the class, and my own desk was propped by the door, to the right, in the first row. All of us booked it downstairs, yelling for our class teacher, and after that, I believe some pastors came to purify the school. To this day, I know that I didn't imagine what I saw. I've verified that this happened with those classmates, some of whom attend the same secondary school as I do now. It's interesting. When I was about 10, I went with my grandmother to visit my uncle who lived out of state. He lived with a few roommates in a house that was on the same plot as an old cemetery. We were there for 2 weeks, and I heard all kinds of bumps and sounds of things moving around, but it was never scary. One day, I was outside on the porch on a swinging chair reading a comic book and looked inside through the screen door and saw a man sitting on the couch facing away from me. He was wearing a red and black plaid shirt with black hair and a beard. I didn't recognize him from any of the roommates, but there was always different people coming and going, so it wasn't out of the ordinary. I continued reading my comic book and the next time I looked up, he had left. Never thought about it again or even mentioned it because like I said, it wasn't unusual for people to be in the house that I never seen before. Fast forward about 30 years and my uncle comes for a visit and my family, mom, grandmother and sister's family all go out to dinner. We're telling stories and my uncle tells one about a roommate that was washing dishes one day and looks out the window and sees 2 little kids outside waving at her. She waved back and then went back to washing dishes. Then it struck her that it was weird for 2 young children to be out there because there wasn't any houses around, so how did they get there? She looked back out the window and they were gone. She thought that was odd because she only looked away for a few seconds. She went outside to find them, and where she had seen them waving to her were 2 grave markers and overgrown with grass for 2 young children that had passed in the 1800s from smallpox or something like that. My uncle said she went back in and grabbed some things and left for good. She told my uncle what happened and she's sorry, but they need to find a new roommate. He said nothing like that ever happened to him, but he would always catch a glimpse out of the corner of his eye of a man with dark hair and a beard, wearing a red and black plaid shirt around the house, and usually sitting on the couch when he would be watching TV. I did an audible gasp and my fork dropped out of my hand, hitting the plate. Everyone looked at me thinking I was being silly and making an exaggerated response, but they also saw I turned somewhat pale. They thought maybe I was sick, but I told them my story and my uncle said, "Yep, that's where I would mostly see him, sitting by the door." He said he never knew the story about why this guy was in the house, but it was a pretty cool validation of my story. When I was in elementary school, I shared a queen-size bed with my older sister and our family dog, a mutt that looked like a short-haired lassie, would sleep at the foot of our bed every night. When I was about 6 years old, I woke up one night around midnight and saw a dark figure standing at the foot of the bed. The figure was entirely in black without any eyes or a face. I tried to wake my sister up, but she rolled over to go back to sleep. My sister must have accidentally kicked the dog because the dog woke up and raised her head and started growling at the figure at the foot of the bed. The growling then woke my sister up and she saw the figure and started screaming. When my parents came into the room and turned the light on, nothing was there. To this day, both my sister and I are adamant that we saw a ghost or other demon in our room. We know we aren't crazy because the dog saw it too.